My name is Andy Thompson, and I have the extreme privilege of being the middle school director at North Point Community Church. But more importantly, I'm a parent that needs all the help they can get. Here's what we know. We know parenting is complicated, and even more so in the midst of the season that we are in. We know you want to get it right, and we want to help. Today, you are in for a treat. Holly Goddard, the Director of Ministry Environments here at North Point, and more importantly, a mother of 3, sat down for a conversation with CHINWE Williams. Dr. Williams is a board-certified and licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia. Her and her family also attend North Point. In this conversation, you'll hear about 6 tips to help you and your family this summer. I can guarantee you this, it's going to help you become a better parent. Be sure to stay tuned until the end because I'll be back to provide a digital resource to help you plan a memorable summer as a family.
Well, CHINWE, thank you so much for being here with us today. Not only do we get to benefit from your counseling expertise, but you're a mom. So you're in this parenting journey with us. And as parents, we're all just trying to figure out the summer, what in the world do we do? It's just such an interesting time. And so really the goal of our conversation today is just to equip some parents with some practical tips on how do we navigate this crazy summer.
Yes.
But before we jump into the how-to, I'd love to just talk about the context we find ourselves in. A lot's happened over the last couple of months. We've been shut in, we've adjusted, but our kids didn't get to finish the school year that they hoped for. And so now they're going to transition to a summer that probably none of us have really ever experienced. So what would you say? How do you help us put some handles around the context that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, so we've heard the word unprecedented how many times, Holly, this season, right?
Yes.
Because it's in fact historical. We're like navigating new terrain. It really is a new normal that none of us could have ever seen coming, right? And so the nature of what we've been going through is so far-reaching in terms of like the scope and impact, and it's impacting families in so many different ways. And I think that's probably one of the most important things to really mention off the top is that for some members of our family, this is a transition. It's a disruption and it's temporary and it's something that will sort of like get through like a bump in the road. And for other family members, it could actually feel like a crisis. And so as individuals, we react to change and transition and adversity in different ways. So you may have a child who it seems okay and is actually okay. And then you may have another child who may not be okay, but isn't really able to share what's happening. So they're more so kind of internalizing everything that's happening around them. And then you may have some family members, some kids who are really struggling with all of this change and transition, because as you mentioned, like, how do you even tell where spring ends and summer begins, right? So the plans that we would have made, this is the time that most families are looking forward to summer plans and vacations and, headed to the beach. And we just don't know if that's going to happen. So it truly is unprecedented. And for different family members, they're going to react in different ways.
Yeah, that's so helpful because it so validates what we're feeling. There's this spectrum of like, oh, there hasn't been a ton of change for my family to, holy moly, everything has changed that we know. And as parents, we have so many variables. Is the pool going to open? Can we send them to summer camp? What about vacation? Can we afford it? Is it the wise thing to do right now? And not only that, but it feels like we've given up some things. As parents, we've given up some freedom. We definitely have given up some productivity over the last few months, but our kids have given up a ton too. They didn't probably get the closure.
That's exactly right.
But what are these sort of common emotional things that we could look for in our kids? Like, how do we care for their emotions during this time?
Such a good question. Well, common reactions to crisis or transition or any sort of change is really going to depend on your child, the age of your child, their life experience, their temperament or personality. But there really is sort of like some common signs that we want to look for. Some of the things for younger kids, if you're parenting younger kids, some of the things to sort of look out for, just sort of like excessive clinginess, right? So we've heard of separation anxiety. I think it's important for parents to know that your child can feel separation anxiety, not just at 3 or 4, but 7, 8. I've seen it at 11 and 12. And that is a normal reaction. For younger kids also, you might notice some regression. And so if they've reached those developmental milestones, you might notice that they're kind of regressing just a little bit during this time, maybe thumb sucking, again, kind of clingy. And then we know as parents of young children that evening experience can be somewhat traumatic when you're trying to put the kids to bed.
Yeah.
So families that I'm talking to now are saying that their kids are afraid to go to bed. They're afraid to be alone. They're afraid to be alone in the dark.
And what is that?
It's their reaction to significant change.
Okay.
This is new for us, right? And we're adults and we're parents trying to navigate this. You have to imagine that a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, their brains aren't even fully developed yet. So all of this change is really taxing to their nervous system. So oftentimes they go into what's known as fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And that's just a manifestation of anxiety, but it's a normal reaction to what's happening.
So let's get practical. When we see these signs, this anxiety or sadness or whatever it is, whatever's presenting, what do we do as parents to meet their needs?
Yes, help your child to feel safe and comforted. It's so important. Kids need to be, adults as well, we all need to feel seen and heard and soothed. And for parents, I think the two primary ways to create a sense of safety is physical comforts and emotional comforts. So physical comforts, I would actually include keeping up with a family routine. So keeping up with regular dinner times and bedtimes. That helps to create predictability and safety. And then also, like, I'm thinking, what parent doesn't have a blanket and a cup of soup? And what I mean by that is that just the physical aspect of like a blanket helps, especially for younger kids, to feel very safe. And then if you make kids of any age their favorite food that's like comforting, that can actually be really, really helpful. And then at bedtime, right, you want to like soothe kids and teach them how to soothe themselves by reading stories, by playing gentle music in the background, and also like rubbing their back. My boys love their backs to be rubbed. And that also creates like a sense of safety. And from an emotional perspective, again, just checking in with their heart. Like, how are you doing?
I love that.
Like, how are you doing? And again, so many of our kids aren't going to be able to access that emotional language. And so another way to create safety is for us as parents to instill in them emotional literacy, which is just being able to like name what it is they're feeling. And before they can name it, we have to be able to recognize it. So for example, if you see your little one having a meltdown or a tantrum and seeming really off and even angry, right? Instead of sort of reacting again in a disciplinary manner, lean in and say, hey, buddy, I see that you're really, really feeling something big. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it disappointment, right? And so that is so helpful in helping our kids to sort of emotionally regulate their feelings that are so big and complicated.
Yeah. Gosh, you're so right, because if we don't learn that as children, we eventually end up learning it sometimes the hard way as adults.
That's exactly right.
And so what I love that you just shared is we can kind of feed them some of these words until they begin to connect the dots themselves, but really, the end goal is like to help them learn to have this emotional vocabulary in the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So adults, grandparents, caregivers, we have the ability to create safety in our home in very, very practical ways.
So, CHINWE, I have girls and a boy.
Yes.
And I've noticed they react pretty differently, So under the idea of needing to be soothed and comforted like every child and every adult needs, what could we expect from the different ways that that's going to manifest from the different genders?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that there's so many similarities and universal themes that apply for boys and girls, but they're also, their brains are wired a little bit differently. So I'm thinking in terms of like older teens, the way that girls typically react to stress and transition is much more outwardly emotional. So they may, tear up, they may show sadness. And what we've noticed is that they typically have like the outlet. So they'll come to mom and say, this is what's happening and I'm not feeling okay about it. Or they go to their peers. And so that's the way that girls tend to be socialized, is to be a little bit more verbal. So not to paint a brush in terms of every girl, but generally speaking. With our guys, the guys that I've noticed in my practice, they tend to be a little bit more internal, and they internalize those emotions. Some of it has to do with, again, socialization. Maybe they don't feel like it's okay for a boy to share sadness and disappointment and regrets. Especially my older teens, they sort of say, I'm supposed to kind of tough it up, tough it out. And so they're not always as comfortable with expressing those emotions. So sometimes what we see is that they're a little bit more physical or aggressive. They may take it out on the soccer field or lacrosse, which is pretty aggressive, or on the basketball court. So in terms of how we as parents can approach them, I think it's important to just be aware of those differences, but also approach your child as a unique individual and learn your child, right? Learn your child. So what are those ways that you can kind of connect and bond and provide safety? Is it just checking in? Hey, buddy, how's it going? Is it doing something active outside? Just your presence, again, is going to be so important, really, no matter what, if you have a boy or a girl.
Oh, that's so helpful. Just to be a student of your kid.
Yes.
And then just to be available.
Be available.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the why questions we're going to get?
Oh, gosh, yes.
So questions like, why can't we go to the pool? Or why can't we do the slumber party? Why can this friend go to this house, but I can't go? Or, what we field as parents.
Oh,
they
yes.
always want to know, what's the why behind this directive that you're giving me, Mom, Dad?
Yeah.
So how can we just think about that differently or approach that?
Yeah. So when I'm talking to parents about that, again, I think our initial reaction is to feel a little bit of frustration. And then we experience our own anxiety because I think for some parents, we believe that it's our job to answer every single question. And so I want to say that we don't have to know all the answers because there are a lot of why questions. And the truth of the matter is so much of the information keeps unfolding, such as, can we go to the pool? Are we going to be able to go on vacation? Why do I still have to stay inside? Why do I have to wear a mask? All of these sorts of questions that parents really may not have the answer to. And that's okay. I think what's more important for parents to know that it's the acknowledging of the distress. It's the acknowledging of the frustration that I don't know how long this is going to last. And when we have restrictions that don't have an end date, that actually breeds more anxiety.
So true.
Yeah, and it's anxiety provoking for parents as well. So just acknowledging that this is a really tough time and say, I know how hard this is. And I wish I had the answers, but I really don't. And Holly, what an awesome opportunity to point them to the Lord. Right?
Yeah.
So when the path is uncertain, when there's no path at all, when we're not sure which way to go and we don't have the answers to all of these questions, what a great opportunity for parents to say, let's take this to the Lord. I don't know, but let's continue having conversations and inviting God into this space that feels so uncertain.
Wow, that was so great because that's just such an unexpected opportunity to really model and live out your faith and just to sort of pass on that legacy or at least join in that with your children.
Yes, and start off young. Start off young. My son, he's 4, and he'll say, I don't know, Mom, but let's take it to the Lord. And I'm like, yes.
Yes. Wow, because we do know who we can trust and who has the answers to all these things. What a great way to reframe those why questions that are coming our way. I love that. So talk about boredom.
Yeah.
Because a normal summer just brings a level of boredom. I know in our house, for me, even that's a trigger phrase when the kids come up and they say, Mom, I'm bored. And so I kind of go into fix-it mode. I have a saying that if you say bored equals chores. And so I shoot off the list of all the things that they could do with their time. So that's kind of moving into fix-it mode, which I'm sure a lot of us do as parents.
Yeah.
But what else could we do? How could we take advantage of this boredom and turn it into something positive?
Yeah. So, and first of all, anxiety, sadness, and boredom, again, are common reactions to huge life transitions. So I've got 3 things to say about that. The first thing is before, as parents, we go into problem solving and solution mode, right? It might be helpful to figure out what's underneath that boredom? Is it sadness? Is it a feeling of loss? Is it anxiety? So kind of helping your kid to like process the other emotions that might be underneath boredom is probably the first step. The second step, I'm like you, right? So I work with a lot of teenagers and I have 2 boys at home, young boys. And when they mention boredom, I have an acronym. I don't know where I got this from, so I want to attribute it to somewhere as someone I don't know, but my parents had a version of this. So one thing that I do for my own kids, and I remember my parents used to say to us when we were younger, is if you're bored, let's sort of spell out bored and find a task that's associated with each letter. So B, bake something or be helpful to someone.
I love that.
O, get outside. So O stands for outside. R, read a book. Both my parents were educators, okay? So we read a lot. We were forced to read a lot. E, exercise, right? And then D, do something creative. And so as a therapist, I've borrowed that. And I say it to my teens sort of in jest because they're like, oh, I'm on restriction. This is before COVID. And I'm so bored. And I'm like, have you baked something? And so those are things that, you know, we can sort of joke about and parents can use as sort of a handle to really check in with their kid and say, okay, there probably is something to do, including chores. And then the last thing is we as parents really don't have to problem solve for our kids. There's some things that we are expected to do. We can sign them up and register them for sports. We can help them get into a hobby or an activity. But really, I think it's good for our kids to kind of figure out what their needs are and how they can problem solve for themselves. So the next time your child says, Mom, I'm bored, what do I do? Acknowledge it, listen with empathy, and then say, hey, what are some ideas that you have to help with this boredom? And so they may push back, but if you do that often enough, that's going to help build another skill, which is problem solving.
Wow, that is so good. So I love that you took what can be, kind of irritating for a parent or a withdrawal, and you can turn it into positive, but also teach them some life skills. Like the ability to problem solve will serve them well as they age and move into adulthood.
Absolutely.
So that's so helpful. So let's talk about our kids and their friendships and this connection that is really, somewhat broken down. They've got the virtual connections, but they didn't get to finish out the field days and the graduations and the trips, the things that really meant a lot to them. So talk about the value of friendship for our kids through their different development stages. And then, I don't know, what do we do as parents to help highlight that importance?
It's so important to stay connected, and friendships are huge. So friendships teach us so much. In friendships, we learn problem-solving abilities. We learn how to compromise. We learn how to deal with conflict and forgiveness, right? And so for kids of all ages, friendships and those social connections are so important. And for teenagers, that's actually their job. Their job is to stay connected with their peers. They're learning so much from their peers. So I think right now they're probably feeling it the most, this whole social distancing and social isolation. So what can we as parents do? I think it's important just to, again, recognize the importance of connection. Social isolation is so detrimental from a mental health perspective. When I hear social isolation, I sort of cringe as a therapist because that's not what we want for anybody, no matter what your age. But for parents, it's probably a good time right now to kind of loosen those restrictions around technology. So thank God for technology, right? So we as parents are mindful about screen time, but this is probably the time where with, monitoring for younger kids, where you want to allow, videos and virtual story time with grandmother. And for older kids, Google Hangouts and like TikTok, anything that is using digital devices, but connecting with other people, I think is so important.
So that's such an important distinction for parents because, probably at first when all this started, maybe we felt a little bit of guilt, of like, oh, all they're doing is playing Fortnite and watching videos. And it's the only way that I can cope at this time. But you would say, it's okay. Maybe loosen some of your restrictions, but channel them towards more connection.
Exactly. Through those digital means.
Okay, that's great. Not just zoning out, but like talking to other humans.
And even video game playing with other kids is okay, especially for right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we think about moving into this unique season, we talked about some of the losses that we've experienced. We talked about some of the opportunities to build resilience, within ourselves and with our kids. But what other opportunities, as you talk to families and as you sit with kids and students, what opportunities do you see that we could take advantage of?
Yes. Finding purpose in the pause, right? So this threw us for a loop, completely uncharted territory. I don't know that we still fully understand the implications and ramifications of what we have been going through. Like, we're not out of it yet, right? But what I have been so excited to see and have conversations with families around is how they're really finding purpose and mission and value. And I'm sure you're seeing some of the same things that I'm seeing, where people are helping. Kids are helping to raise money for PPE, personal protection equipment. Kids are, initiating, helping vulnerable family members and neighbors with picking up groceries and prescriptions. And Jesus teaches us about loving our neighbors and serving our neighbors. Holly, I've got to tell you, and I feel somewhat, shameful about this, I have not seen much of my neighbors in the last couple of years as much as I have this season.
It's true.
I'm working with clients virtually. I'm homeschooling. My husband and I are tag teaming. But when we get a little bit of a break, we are going around the neighborhood. I'm having conversations distance with neighbors that I haven't connected with in so long. And I feel like there's such purpose in that. And then finally, how many times have we heard that our family is our primary ministry, right?
So true.
And we are spending quite a bit of time with our family. And so there's purpose in that as well. And so those activities, especially fun activities, help provide purpose, because that's our mission and our value, right? Is spending time with family. And being able to do that really strengthens those bonds. It helps to build resilience. We can laugh, we can play, we can really experience downtime in a way that we haven't in such a long time. And so with the summer, that's something that we can actually plan for, is downtime.
Wow.
Everything that's happened to us in the last 8 weeks or so, we couldn't have planned for. So maybe this is a way to sort of regain a little bit of control and have fun within our families.
Gosh, I love that so much, because there's such an opportunity for the family unit to bond and be set up like it hasn't before.
Yes.
One thing that you said is really what I'm learning these days is I would think that I had to plan something almost extravagant for my family, like the Disney cruise or the big thing, because we're always going so hard. So it's like we needed to go play hard.
Yes.
But just this past weekend, we drove up the road 45 minutes. We tubed. The 5 of us floated down a tube on a river for 1 hour. So low key, minimal effort. And when we got out of the river, my middle daughter said, "Thanks, Mom. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life."
Oh, my gosh.
And I thought, how easy was that? And I think it's just being present with our kids.
Yes. Huge.
Because we've lived such a hurried life.
Huge.
And God is so in the present.
Yes.
And if we as parents, because I know I struggle with this, of being fully present, giving them my attention, really, I think that's one of the best ways we can love them and create these little moments that will have a lasting impact on them.
That are memorable.
Yeah.
Right? So it's present. And let me tell you, it's water. There's something about
that,
water.
yeah.
My teens, I can't tell you, I feel like there has to be a hashtag around this. I should have quarantined next to the water. People miss being next to bodies of water. There's something very calming and therapeutic around water. And so I love that you guys did that. So if there's anything that's available, any park, any outdoor space where your families can get close to water, I think that's so wonderful, because I think that's also God's creation, and it reminds us to be still and be present, as you mentioned. I love that. One idea I'm thinking about for parents, after dinner, they can just go in the backyard with their kids, have a water balloon fight. My kids have a small kiddie wading pool, so I've never been in there, but I know adults who try to get in there, pull out the super soaker, just something really simple that's fun and easily accessible right in the backyard. Holly, it's important to prioritize fun. We are coming off of the heels of a really, really unique experience. And summer is going to be unique as well, right? But hopefully we're not going to be homeschooling and working from home as much. But we don't know what camps are going to look like. We don't know what those activities are going to be, what activities are going to even be available. So it's important to find simple ways to prioritize fun. And if you're a single parent, I think it's such a cool idea to find another parent and get your families together, go out in the backyard, do like a fire pit and really roast some s'mores, play some music. Of course, have the lawn chairs 6 feet apart. But in that type of environment, it's still going to be like super fun. And if that's not your thing, order some pizza, have a Zoom dance party. But fun, I think, is really the order of the day.
You just gave us our marching orders. Have fun, make it simple.
Yes.
That's what we should prioritize this summer, is prioritize that fun. That's so helpful. Thank you so much. And thank you for your insights and your encouragement as we kind of move into something brand new. But I feel like, I personally feel excited to make this summer, memorable and fun.
Yes.
And not have a lot of pressure around it, but just to do the small fun things with our families.
Plan for fun.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for your time, your expertise.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Holly.
Yeah, absolutely.
One way that we believe we can help make your summer better despite the circumstances is by creating a resource for you. We wanted to provide you with a family summer bucket list. You can find this resource at the link on the bottom of your screen. We've taken out all the work. Now you and your family just need to do it. We truly believe that this can be the best summer yet with your children. We are praying for you, and if there's anything that we can do to help you, please let us know. We know parenting is complicated. We know that you want to get it right, and we're here to help.